edition of electricity is none other than the distinguished DG CEO will be our presenter. Can we have a round of applause for him? You will agree that the DG has given a new birth, vision, and air to the wings of the RMRDC since he assumed the role of DG CEO. He has, in the recent past, made sure that the council under his leadership has been given the ISO 1001 certification. Can we have a round of applause for him? And of national importance, he has ensured that the bill on 30% minimum as value addition is going forth smoothly in the National Assembly. Another round of applause for him.
No. We have exited National Assembly, please.
Okay. So he corrects me. It's now a bill. Can we have a greater, more round, resounding round of applause for this bill that has been passed into law? Indeed, the council.
It's not a law. It's a bill.
It's still a bill.
Just waiting for the president.
Okay, assent to it. Thank you, sir. So he has moved us from one level to another, and the journey can only be getting better and better. Without much ado, I want to invite our own distinguished DG CEO, Professor Nanyelugo Ikemonso, for his presentation.
Sit down, don't worry. Sit down. It's better that people don't come in and Okay, so this sounds strange to me because traditionally I'm a teacher. I find myself now in this role. So today I'm going to be talking about what is required for us before what we should do as an RMRs and where we should end. So from extraction to transformation, you look at the picture on the line, beneath this, you could see the two walls that we're talking about. The first is the extraction bit, and the next here is the transformation. Now, even though I limited this, I restricted this to solid minerals, but of course it's still an application in agriculture and even in business animals. So this, if you just look beyond the text, behind this, you see these people extracting some solid minerals. When the solid minerals are already transformed to bars, which again is the part of what we are called to do as an organization, to intermediate between the extraction, agricultural extraction, solid mineral extraction, waste extraction, and making sure that they are available for the users in manufacturing that will eventually transform them. of operational works that operate here. So the byline here is building resilient supply chain. So it's good to explain what this also means, so we can carry everybody along. Supply chain is one thing that we have ignored, typically ignored in the council here, because to some extent we are blind. We look at it as not a critical part of what we do, but in fact we cannot achieve our results without looking at supply chain. So the council supply chain involves the entire gamut of people, systems, laws, processes, logistics, that will ensure that this journey from extraction to transformation takes place. So what will it look like if you do not create impact? If you do not, after being the RMRDC, and you eventually find out that you are not promoting manufacturers to achieve their ends, it means your role in this process is useless. So to make our role impactful, we must think in terms of these processes, organizations, people, systems, laws, and all this. The journey extraction to transformation is seamless. The second word that you may find an operator here is resilient. Resilient. So if you understand the supply chain broadly, you now begin to look at qualifiers. Resilient supply chain. What qualifies that supply chain? So resilience means something that doesn't give up. So we're thinking in terms of anticipation. You know ahead of time the things the system should or the way it should. We're thinking, you're anticipating what problems, whatever. You can predict very correctly the supply chain. What ensures that this journey again takes place successfully. So anticipation is one. Even when I anticipate it, you respond. So resilience embraces things like anticipation, response, and recovery. So when you anticipate, even if it fails, and even if it comes through, how do you respond when eventually that is the case? And then if it fails eventually, how do you recover from it? So if, for instance, so if you have these three elements, for instance, as a human person, you write the exam, you anticipate the exam, you write the exam, and then you fail the exam. How do you recover? How do you engage with the exam? How do you anticipate it? And you recover very quickly. That's resilient. If you combine all those things, that's resilient. So which other one to move on? Now we talk about the third, maybe the other is the value addition. In fact, I'm going to be taking in terms of the agenda model, because the value addition here is what we'll be talking about. This activity is addition. But of course, in value addition, you scale it, because there are many processes, there are many things in between. You can add value at a very small level, at some advanced level, at some intermediate level. And all activities taking place between this point, and that point, has a system of intermediate inputs. If you get wheat, you don't hear me? If you get cassava, once you start washing it and peeling it, you're adding value to it. When you start crushing it, you start having derivatives, you're adding value to it, and then until it gets to different levels of manufacturing. But even in between, there are graded activities. So there are steps for different derivatives you want to get. So broadly speaking, this is what we're going to be discussing today. So the reason I have to go through this is so that everybody understands what I'm going to be talking about. So it gives you opportunity to question. It gives you opportunity to understand and to question. If you don't understand anything, you let me know. I'm not teaching now, no. I'm not a teacher. If you don't understand any of these things, let me know. Okay. So let me provide us with context before I go into the agenda for the presentation. So the context, like you know, goes back to what Nigeria wants. Deliberately, I always use the word prosperity because for me, the ultimate goal is prosperity. So, and this prosperity for the country can never, it will just be wishy-washy to think that we can prosper the way we desire to unless we industrialize. Because that's what all countries that are experiencing prosperity have done. You know, even if you experiencing some measure of prosperity at this point, they're not going to be sustainable across centuries. Maybe at some point it will dip, or even across decades. So the first thing in terms of laying the context is this is what Nigeria wants. But this dream, according to Nigeria and by its policy, has to be anchored on at least 80% local resource utilization. That's actually the strategy the country has adopted. And what has happened over the years is that they have used policy. The country has used policy and all manner of instruments, including switch, up to this point to see if this is possible. That was why when I came on board, I said, "Well, come on, please. If you're going to make noise, I'll chase you out." Yaro, if you make noise, this from me. If you make noise, I'll chase you out. You just have to. If you don't understand anything, just raise your hand and I'll explain. So to achieve this 80% domestic resource utilization, we've used some of instruments, including situation, policies, quote unquote. Well, that's a policy too. But when we came here, when I said, look, if we don't legislate on this and make it an infringement that we do not cooperate with this, we can never achieve this. And that was why we have the bill today that we've gone through and we extract this bill. So, this is what Nigeria wants. And now this is how they want it. So, it's an intentional pursuit which is predicated on import substitution, the program of import substitution. Now, globally, when you say import substitution, it appears to be working against global trade, but nations, countries do that, and they have institutions like ours deliberately configured to achieve this. The purpose of RMRDC is import substitution. At the back of that import substitution is value addition. So there are two elements and the two reasons why RMRDC exists in the first instance. Primary is import substitution to facilitate import substitution. Having at the back of our mind that this is the strategy of the federal government, or national government rather, 80% domestic resource utilization. So, and that is the calling of the RMRDC. So depends on robust skill slack to the cover extracting most of the resources here up to 80%. So, but the problem, and over the years, the problem is that this cannot happen if you do not build a resilient supply chain. Do you understand? It's not possible. No matter how beautiful your laboratories are, no matter how great you are as a fabricator of equipment, and then you call it RMRDC, it cannot happen unless you focus on the market and the elements that make what is in the soil become what is in the market. So in terms of agenda, now having laid the background, this is how my presentation is going to take. I guess I have 30 minutes for this. Yeah? So what is 30 minutes? Let me know. So we have the statement of the problem. Of course, again, I've laid that statement of the problem, but I'm not going to represent it properly. Then this is the picture we currently face, which is a failure in capturing raw material value, massive failure. And then how do we achieve supply chain integrity? Is supply chain integrity meshed with the resident, or is the integrity will help us think in terms of the resident? And then look at what government is doing and what government should do to achieve that resilience. And then we look at a more specific, the situation of infrastructure and logistics versus the transformation, and we look and we end with the way forward. So this is the problem. The problem can be more than this, but somehow I've broken them or summarized it. I've summarized them into four. The one has to do with the structure, the economic structure. The second has to do with the integrity of the supply chain. The third has to do with government and its policies. And then more specifically, in terms of infrastructure to drive the supply chain. By the way, if at this point you feel that you still do not understand where we are, please let me know. Now, it's not difficult to understand the structure. The structure is still colonial. Very, very, pretty much colonial. And what happens, to just explain it, Nigeria exports primary commodities at low prices due to pervasive lack of integrated domestic processing capacity. In fact, even the processing capacity is part of the supply chain problem. So we fail to capture value. So low levels of domestic value addition and economic leakage. I think it's easy to understand. The second one, problem, and when I say statement of the problem that guide this discussion. So the second one is about integrity of supply chains. You see, here at the Raw Materials Research and Development Council, there's been a very, very fundamental misunderstanding of what our role should be. And we're making efforts to slowly, but a bit very, very principledly, sorry if that is correct, to see if we can be in that, we can follow that trajectory. Ours is facilitation, or more correctly, intermediation. Because we are not solid minerals, we are not the Ministry of Agriculture. We intermediate between that, or between the activities and manufacturing. And it's broader because even the environment is part of what is involved on the other side of the intermediation chain. But there are things in that, if we're going to focus on this very well, then our focus essentially as an institution should dwell mostly on achieving supply chain efficiency, supply chain integrity. We want to be sure as a council that raw materials that get to manufacturers are authentic, at the right quality, and it gets to them at the right time, the right standard, and that the origins are traceable, and that even the extraction of these raw materials follow some ethics. These are some of the things intermediators like us, in fact we are the key intermediator, should be doing. That's where you have this supply chain integrity. I don't think we are focused on that much. This place, one of the things you guys will finally do is You brought me out here to roast me. Because the ACs are not working. So the next problem is the policy and governance. We have plenty of policy pronouncements that run contrary to even this idea of 80% domestic resource mobilization for our industries. So, and we lack frameworks, clear, well-defined frameworks to achieve that. In finance, the financial instrument, the infrastructure, and a whole number of mechanisms that will enable us to achieve that. They are lacking. So there's a huge gap in terms of what we expect or the kind of result we want to achieve and what we are doing. You know, the government, we have the policy, but they again deviate from the policy deliberately. We contradict the policy. We are government too, we're talking to ourselves, so we now know what to do. So finally, we look at the reality. The finally is that assuming these things don't exist, even the reality on the ground, which is the basic infrastructure for these things, are not yet supported. So you can do your wonderful research. You can do your wonderful everything here, but they don't find their way to manufacturers, because even infrastructure available do not support it. So take the first problem, and what I've done here is just to, in the first four problems, just elaborate on these problems to show you the enormity of these problems, and then I'll tell you what I think should be solutions. And that's the way I've structured it. First is massive raw materials value capture failure. So it's obvious we have very massive failure in terms of raw material capture. So the first graph tells you, sorry, you know, my background is economics, so we use all these things to explain. So if you look at this, so what I have here is non-oil trade deficit. It's simple to understand. If you remove oil in your trading activity, so you're not focused on oil. So everything that's not oil, you look at the imports and you look at the exports, and you look at the difference between the import and the export. And what it's showing here is that we are importing by far more than we're exporting aside oil. If you put oil down, you might have some surplus. But we're not looking at oil here. So we're looking at manufacturers beyond oil. So you sell all these your beautiful extractions, and then you keep importing manufacturers that keeps deepening. You can look at how it's growing. This deficit, how it's been growing in the past 10 years. So the deficit has been growing, which points to the fact that you lack the capacity, because if you can process what you have extracted into manufacturers, you are not going to be importing much of them that have put you in these deficits. That's simply what it tells you. So you have that inability to process what you have, and therefore you resort to the importation of manufacturers. The second one is like that. This thing keeps going on. So I think I can use my normal voice. So the second one is like that. So this is material value addition. So just like, instead of saying the raw material, I'm sorry. So what it means, MVA, material value addition over total exports. They're not saying, if for all the exports you have, what percentage of that export do you have value added to it? Understand me? Now you have this for China. You can see China, and China is saying like more than 90% of our exports have value added to it. Do you understand that? Yes, then you go to this one, India. And India is saying more than 65% of our exports are manufactures. Then they do for Brazil. And then for Brazil, at least more than 42% of what they export are value-added manufacturers. I don't need to go further. In fact, that's South Africa. South Africa has, I mean, the least they had was, they have in 2023 for 28.5, but my beloved country, Nigeria. This is my beloved country, Nigeria. We haven't exceeded 0.3%, which is the highest. In fact, we should be clapping for, what did they swear in to? This was 2023. Okay, so this actually should be attributed to Buhari, frankly speaking, because this is the highest we've had. We've not got up to 2% of exports as manufacturers. How do you think that you can ever achieve that kind of prosperity? It's not going to be possible. So essentially, this is just to give you a picture of the depth of massive value capture. So you're not capturing value from what you have. There's a big, definitely these are parameters. In economics, that's my background. If you're going to be, if I'm in the court, I have to prove to you properly that this is the situation. Because sometimes, and the reason for, let me go back. If you look at this and this, these people, export promotion, they'll be telling you how Nigeria is exporting all sorts. But this shows you the true picture. That you're exporting nothing. This tells you the picture. This is what countries are doing. You export things of value. You export things of value. That is when, if you're not capturing value, you're just wasting, you're allowing the economy, the prosperity to leak, to get out of the system. And when they leak, they don't leak into the ocean. They leak into the hands of other nationals. They leak into other countries. So this is global map. Okay, that's fine. So now this is another one. And what it's talking about is the economic complexity. Economic complexity is just about if you're exporting, how many products do you export? If you talk about Nigeria now, how many products do we export? It's basically oil. Others really are very, it's basically oil. But even at that, look at what other countries are doing. Here, the complexity is the ubiquity of products in the export basket. And you also look at the diversification of those exports. So from oil, you have Vaseline, you have jelly, you have other chemicals, you have other raw materials. That's the ubiquity, the diversity. So, one is the highest. And you can see this is 0, so 1 is probably somewhere here. And the countries corresponding to that is the United States, Canada, this is Alaska area, this is Europe, and that's China. These are countries corresponding to that. Now, this is where your beloved country Nigeria is, and this is the color code that matches that. It's not this one though. This one. So you do not have that. So it again points to massive failure in terms of value capture. Now let's again look at what we call import availability ratio. And it's very simple to explain what it means. The import availability ratio tells you this is what we import. What we have here is what we import, the quantity this is what we produce of the same material, and this is the total available of that material. So it's something that's easily calculated. So you now look at the ratio of what's imported to the ratio of what is available in total. That is, if you put together what is imported plus what is domestically produced. Now, if you follow me in this journey, you look at, I asked, I have to extract what I consider the most important 10 raw materials for, based on a number of criteria. So if you look at wheat, for instance, what we have there is basically, in fact, this measures substitution, import substitution. So it's something you can use to proxy the level of import substitution. So for wheat, you can see that the import availability is very high, 95, so import dominance. So even if we have capacity to produce wheat, we're not substituting enough. So look at raw sugar. So perhaps this is what Dangote has done, helped us to do, but we're still we're still heavily dependent on imports, up to 64%. So if RMRDC should be doing what it should be doing very well, we should be doing a lot of work to ensure that we reduce that import availability ratio to go down. Look at ore, iron ore, concentrate. So it's still high. But we have large deposits of iron ore. The same for fertilizer. And these are very critical things that we need here. Look at fertilizer, NPK. And then look at cotton. Even with the capacity to grow cotton. I hope you're following what I'm showing you. That's okay. So the ones that we've been able to conquer things like limestone, and I understand the RMRDC did a lot of work, limestone and gypsum, and of course kaolin. I understand that RMRDC played a critical role before I came here in the area of gypsum, which has helped the cement industry to utilize gypsum and limestone in their activity. So that's why you have 29% and 3%. Import availability ratio. That means they've been able to reduce the imports, and the local manufacturers are utilizing that, and so on. So barite, we have that in abundance, but global politics, they will reject our own barite, even when we know that that ours is even better than what they import. So, and that has kept us at 67%, very low level of import substitution. So this is one of the things that help us to show where we are, whether we're delivering on our results or not. If we're talking about impact, particularly for RMRDC, this kind of ratio is very important. It's something we need to review all the time. But again, it points to the picture of that. It helps us to understand that you have massive value capture failure. So I'm going to be showing you this vis-a-vis exports, so you can see what is happening to the economy. If you look at limestone, so here you have domestic value addition. I just explained limestone. You can see the value addition to limestone within in-country value addition is between 70 to 90%, because we have industries tapping into that. Look at cocoa beans. Just take a second look at cocoa. Is it if you look at cocoa, this is the level of domestic value addition, less than 20%. So if you take a sugar like 15%, domestic value addition to cocoa that we cultivate, we produce it. All commodities commodities that we claim we export have this kind of number. So if you follow this, you will see it. So we trade the rest. We hand over the value of this to the rest. Iron ore, I've explained that to you. Look at it. If you take an average of that, you have about 40%. So over 60% of that. Sesame, very, very alcoholic. So one addition to sesame is about 10%. So the rest of the sesame is out. No value is added to it. Look at lithium. Lithium is hot and has been carted away every day. One addition to lithium, the world's prime raw material today, we have less than 5% value addition. When we went to the University of Nigeria, for that day, we set up a center of excellence in nanotechnology. Basically, because there was this woman that also developed batteries. It's just I don't know. On sabbatical, I want to see if we can get that. So now look at lithium. Now look at gold. The entire Zamfara is sitting on gold. But look at what, no less than 10%. You can take off you get up and go. Don't sleep in my business. My teacher made
You should be moving it every 5 minutes. Different so that you can see people, not just one particular.
So it's some animals are inefficient, fragmented and risk growth. Is it to understand risk growth? The guys in the villages, they don't go to farm again. I'm a farmer. I have close to 1,000 hectares and recently I'm about to acquire 8,000 hectares with a partnership with the government. But each time I go to farm, in Abuja here, I go to farm, I was 70 hectares. That's where I came to. I got 70 hectares. But I'm doing But each of my people, all of these people are following me. Everybody's a farmer, like everybody. We go to farm on Saturdays and Sundays. But one of the things that happen, don't worry, I'm not going to church man. And somehow, instead of converting my people to be church goers, making them less. So on Sunday we go to church, and we go to the farm. On Saturday we go to farm. On Mondays we come home.
I'm lucky you. I won't be
Yeah, I go to church. I don't rest.
I won't be
If I rest, I'll try.
I won't be here.
What do I rest? Rest is
Okay.
guys, what do you like from person? So that one is peaceful rest. I'm not created to do all of that. If you rest for 8 hours, if you rest for 8 hours, you sleep for 8 hours, you can't cross beyond where you are. It's not about prayer. You take 8 hours and rest. Where you are, you just be crossing. When you get to that, you can't do that. Because 8 hours, 8 over 24 is what? What's percentage? That's one part of your life. So if you're supposed to live for 60 years, you've rested for 20. That's great. It's simple. There's no successful man that rests like that. Otherwise, people rest will bring illnesses, sicknesses, all of that. Poverty helps in. So it's not particularly wonderful. When we say rest, of course you have to have rest, yes, but it's not like resting close to rest in peace. So anyway, the point I'm making is that for us to get things out, we all carry gun. Everybody carries gun. So everybody carries guns. We don't go to farm without gun. So if we get other people now to join us, everybody carry gun. So if you're farming, you have gun. So imagine that people can afford to have gun to go to farm. The first herdsmen, the first kidnappers, the first people. So it's risk prone. The supply chain is risk prone. That serious fragmentation in the process because again of infrastructure challenges. So you buy here, you go there and buy, the policies differ. Remember we talk about integrity. So you buy grade A of a particular kind of raw material here, and what is required is like grade C. So what you have been struggling is to see if you can get somewhere you can buy predominantly grade C to reduce the effects of the grade A. And so on. So some of these inefficiencies mar the supply chain integrity, and we can look at some specifics. Let's keep this. The first is the infrastructure, dilapidated roads. I don't explain that. Power, I don't explain that. Which both of these inflates the operating cost. I'm sure you know how it works. Okay? If you are going through a road that is very bad, if they used to charge 2 naira to plow that road, they will increase the 3 naira. Because the drivers know the effect on their cars. So they have to add that one. So generally, if you're not transporting things that people used to produce, you inflate the operating cost. Okay? So energy alone, which is not available, can see we are running a generator. I was supposed to be running a generator as hours. But where we are, we buy this lot, sometimes the entire week we buy this. So again, the insecurity and other operations make for what we call the fragility threat. That is infrastructure, insecurity, and incoherence. Infrastructure problem, insecurity problem, and incoherence. So this policy, for instance, policy fragmentation. Look at a typical example. Policies like the export expansion grants. Nigeria has export expansion grants. I'm sure you know. You know about the export expansion grant. Hello? There are things you should know as a member of this council. They give grants if you can export all your oranges, all your cashew. So how are you not going to have these oranges available as raw material for domestic producers? If I'm incentivizing you to work against the system, how can the system succeed? I'm giving you incentive so you can export all your beans, and then you want to set up a company or industry that is very, very buoyant in the utilization of beans. How would that happen? So this is one of those challenges that in fact makes it difficult for that supply chain integrity to be uphold. So the top problem is policy and governance. Supply chain implementation gap in supply chain resilience. I've told you about resilience. Resilience appears as part of the things we are looking at. In fact, that's the key thing. Because we're looking at building resilient supply chain. I've told you that resilient supply chain has to do with anticipating the supply chain correctly, responding to the supply chain correctly, and recovering from whatever problem that is triggered by supply chain. And these are 3 things that we consider here. The first one is a clear, actionable framework. I'll give you an example of the EE, Export Expansion Grant, which is disastrous. But we've allowed it to operate because when the Indians go to the National Assembly and bribe all of them, they allow them because the Indians mop up our agricultural commodities. This is somehow, to say the least, some kind of economic sabotage of unexplainable proportion. You all your cocoa and walked off. So people cannot do chocolates in Nigeria. Look at the share nuts, and I thank the president for his taking in the share nut area. Share nuts before it drops, they don't collect them. Including fear. That it was only people from poor background like us that used to eat fear in the past. Now you don't see it. They mop up everything. I don't only know what I call fear. Yeah? Fear, you do it for God knows how long you're going to do it, for every point or something. Not that fear. You do it for God knows how long. Don't worry, if you don't belong to our background, you won't know what it is. But we grew up eating it because they will leave it on the firewood and go to work. So by the time everybody's coming from work, so now even Indians pop up all of that, you don't see them. You don't see them anymore. So because of unclear, actionable frameworks, if you look at something like cashew nuts, you don't get cashew in my village. Before you could, if you as a young person, from school, you pick cashew. Even though then we're not picking cashew nuts, because of huge importance. But now people harvest cashew alright. They harvest the cashew, so you don't get the cashew. They harvest the cashew unripe. So which again speaks to things like the quality of the raw material that eventually comes out. They're not ripe. So that's part of the problem. And part of the problem here is because, again, going back to something like that export expansion grant, you're giving people incentives to export anything. So yeah, I pay the additional money just to carry everything that we have. Wrong. So the deficiency infrastructure support is there.
I didn't say Makayo.
Talk about principle, you have electricity.
Yes.
Right up of there. But again, you talk about value addition, but you don't have financial instruments to support that process. But you have financial instruments or financial incentive to support the sabotaging of value addition. Do you understand? You do not have financial instruments, you do not have financial policies that support value addition. But in fact, you have financial incentives backed by law to support programs that work against value addition and import substitution. So, look at some of the core failures, the disconnection between official policy intent and operational execution. Goal: boost knowledge trade and promote value addition. Policies often inadvertently incentivize the export of raw goods over value addition. So that's clear. Create a stable and predictable business environment for local processors. Regulatory and institutional inconsistencies plague the operating landscape, which is again everywhere. Even if you think about the export expansion grant, even incentives for value addition sometimes make it easier. If I'm talking about non-defined incentives, your personal problems can even make it easier for somebody to say, you know what, just carry this thing and go. We did about 40 hectares of potato in Abuja. And then we brought them out. Initially, I wanted to see if I could extract pharmaceutical starch from them, from the thing. Then I wasn't able to get the material, the equipment to extract the pharmaceutical starch. So, these my people. We then said, okay, let's go and sell this potato. So, Kisley was the one who handled it. Kisley handled the sale. So So he was the one who wrote, he told me that we can do, because before I started going to the market, we said, okay, we checked the market, they were selling like 40,000 a bag. Is it 50 kg? Is it 50 kg? 40,000 naira, 50 kg. I told him that this thing, that once we start going to the market, that this thing will drop. He said, no. So I think the week after that, when we now started to implement, I think it came down to like 9,000. So we now said, okay, let's count it now. I told him this 9,000 will not stand. So he worked the numbers, just told me, this thing, you calculate it at this. Blah, blah. I said, I understand this. If you do not control the entire value chain, you lose. You must be the one that extracts, add value before, otherwise you lose. Which exactly tells the story of what the country experiences. We ended up begging people to buy that thing for 4,000. The man turned himself into a beggar. Going in the night, they will load trucks of potato. Before you land there, you will not see a sea of potato. And if your potato lasts the next 24 hours, the value goes down again. So it must be taken up at that time. So you said some less than 24 hours. Okay. It was between 4 and 5K. That was all a bag. So, number one, we lost money. We lost money. Everyone was seeing us losing money. And the reason we lost money was because we don't have the capacity to add value to it. That's what happens to us as a country. This is just a particular case. For me, and you remember that I use machines to farm. I farm with tractors. So then if you extrapolate at scale, see what our farmers do, you cultivate, you lose money. How can a country that is predominantly dependent on resources and have not exceeded the level of extraction ever prosper? It's not possible. It's either you lose or you make minimal profit. The only way you can advance is to add value. If we had acquired or even borrowed an equipment for pharmaceutical starch, who will sell it then? Who will even sell that? Or even flour. So just throw it in and it converts to flour. We pack it. Who will sell that? And the value will go up. Everyone will be happy. But we lost money. So the thing is, we have to understand how this works. And there are all supply chain issues. Those supply chain issues, because if the people that convert this into flour, it is easier for them. If there's train a rail line that goes straight to where their factories are, it will not be as cheap as 4,000. But because they have to come and buy them and then truck them back, they also have to make profit. So the consequences are numerous: loss of industrial base, loss of revenue, loss of sustainability. No, these are 4 levers that we can adopt for resilience. We can de-risk.
I won't say Timo.
So using things like industrial zones near raw material sources. You know, I said, for instance, if there's a rail line, so if you have industrial zones or clusters, processing clusters, say for, like in the case of the project I'm talking about, pharmaceutical starch, if you have industrial clusters and you have your rail line straight to the place, you can actually de-risk the supply chain problem. So, and integrating, that's also connected to integrating infrastructure. So that infrastructure is integrated to where the raw material sources are. You know? And policy enforcement. You know, there are things that we can do through enforce local content creation to keep raw materials, tax holiday, consumer finance exclusively for firms investing in high domestic value addition processing technology. I do not see a reason why we cannot give tax-free incentives, maybe even give non-interest facilities to like a company that says, I want to do battery extraction in Nigeria. Or share nuts in Nigeria. And so again, due to transparency, this is one of the things I would like to implement the National Raw Materials Index, which helps us to track processes, supply, demand, processing in real time, levels in real time. If you have that kind of information, it becomes easier again to support decision making when it comes to value addition. So the infrastructure and logistics piece is well known. I just do a little. So if you look at this is what it costs to self-generate power. You know, and you can see the trend. That's why I just trended it. You can see the trend line that is going, it's worsening every day. And in terms of specifics, electricity costs about 40% of what it costs. So producers, the cost of electricity generation is about 40%. Average daily power outage is about 10 hours. So if you sleep for 8 hours like you guys plan to do, and you have 8 hours out, 10 hours outage during work hours, so how much more time do you have for production? So in terms of logistics performance, if you look at this, the lower numbers and the ranks, the true scores on logistics performance, what they have on the upper. Compare Nigeria with South Africa. South Africa has been on the least it has is 3.31 across in the past number of years. Nigeria has not gotten, apart from 2014, Nigeria has not climbed beyond, has not gone to 3 at all. Look at, and of course look at again the ranks, 93, 75, 90, 110. In a community of world of countries of about 120. Now look at China, look at the scores, and look at the ranks. 19 and probably 28. Look at the United States, between 14 and 17 in terms of logistics performance. But our own is between 75 and 110. You know, little neighbors just carry the so in terms of logistics costs as a percent of GDP is about up to 15%. Logistics costs as a percent of product value up to 75%. If what it costs you, if logistics takes about 75% of the cost, what again are you going to now be doing as in terms of profit? So I'm going to just go straight to, I don't know how much, whether I've exceeded the 30 minutes. I definitely have. So nobody told me I've done 30 minutes. Yeah? Are you sure? Because you enjoyed this, or because I've been teaching? So in terms of policy transformation, enforcing the value addition, I think institute and rigorously enforce the minimum domestic value addition threshold of 30%. And that's what we have been fighting for. Thankfully, we have a bill now. And for those of you who are prayer warriors, we pray so that the president will wake up on the day that paper will be put on the table, so you assent to it. When you assent to it, it becomes an act. So, but that's what we're fighting for. This one, I'm going to be establishing it very soon, pretty soon, because as you know, we are setting up the biggest database for raw materials, almost like in Africa. We have people from Uganda. They came to my office yesterday. They want to replicate what we're doing here. We're discussing with Museveni. So they're here. I'm speaking and I'm still here. to see if they've seen what we're doing and they want to copy it for Uganda. So this national dollar addition was to track and publicly report progress on domestic processing levels, and again gives us tells us about what's happening in the area of import substitution. So that makes us do what we're expected to do, and this presents the truth the way it is, and guide government. And I target all central bank and government financial incentives to firms that demonstrate measurable, verified compliance with the domestic value addition mandate. The truth is, a whole lot, apart from a whole lot tied to the implementation of this. If you implement this, at least you come out of it in a lot of ways, not from massive value capture failure. At least small farmers at standard level operators in terms of solids can do their work, can supply. So I've explained a little bit of these things, but again, we can talk about the risky production zones. I've talked about it. When you establish secure industrial plants, provide product oil, so it doesn't feed into. So why secure some of these near primary sources of iron and raw material, provide security, power, and land access, basically. And then the traceability, again, the council is working on this, on the traceability. Yeah, they're all handling it. Okay, so we're working on with some organizations on traceability, so that you can point to the authenticity, because that's part of also supply chain integrity. If you say, if you cannot, if you have raw materials that you trace to where what do you call those people that America is trying to bomb? They're terrorists. So if you go and get your raw materials from it, so it's not acceptable. I mean, or some raw materials that are tampered. Instead of looking for gold, they mix it with some elements. So all of those are things, or you trace it to, you don't know that terrorism is part of. You don't know? There are a number of things we cannot even export.
You know what I mean?
In 2018, I went to buy 5,410 hectares of oil palm estates in the south of Crossroad. And the reason we went to buy it was because it was a reserve area. Reserve areas, if you produce, so if you trace oil production to that reserve area, they will buy it conveniently in Europe and any place because it's designated for oil palm production. If they trace oil, vegetable oil, sent to some areas that are not just designated, it affects the action of whether to buy it or not. Yeah? They're all concerned, authenticity, quality, because the one that from the reserve area, you know that authentically is designed by government, approved by government, for instance, for oil palm. So the one outside of it may not, if they trace some farms where kids, when we started the potato thing. No, I won't do potato again. Because what we did, immediately we removed the potato, we did belly seed there. It's all have belly seed and growing there. So, but when we're supposed to weed, after we've done the cultivation, the tilling and all of that, and planted, we wanted to weed. So we were looking for how to save costs. So one man has been helping us, one local man, he knows where to get Then I went to one mosque in Nasarawa. I brought children. And I screamed. I said, look, do you want me to put me in trouble? I said, these are kids. So that kind of thing is against ethics and like, I said, no, we have to. He said, no, I didn't do it. I said, no, you do it, but it's not at scale like this. As a kid, I followed my mom to farm. That's not the case. But when you're doing mass, if things like that are traced to people buy your destiny because it's no longer ethical. It's not compliant with required ethics. So again, I've talked about corridors, dedicated corridors, prioritize investment in dedicated transport infrastructure rails solely for the movement of raw materials. So if we have clusters properly, don't worry, I'm done. So this is actually the last slide, which is again almost like what we were talking about. So I've dedicated multimodal corridors, which again ties to where you have bulk, raw material production, single window, and captive power, at least for energy. So I thank you for listening and listening.
Thank you very much for the representative of pointed out to us that Nigeria cannot continue to export raw materials unless you add value with them. Otherwise, we'll continue to have excessive leakage. And then we also spoke about
Please, can we give the DG a round of applause? Can we make it a standing ovation, please? You can make it a standing ovation. Let's honor His Excellency in delivery, capacity in presentation, knowledge in display. Please, you just give me a round of applause. Thank you. That was explicit, lucid, and highly innovative. That had everyone spellbound to discovering new pathways of knowledge and also finding ways for the raw material of the future. Ladies and gentlemen, while you're still seated, once again, can you do justice by just giving a round of applause? On these, I hand over to Michael Compare for her to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor John. Ladies and gentlemen, the DG has indeed done justice to his presentation today, and I would like to invite a question on the floor. Today, we're going to be a bit more liberal. We usually ask for 2 questions from here, 2 questions from here. But because I know everyone is eager to hear directly the responses from our own DG, we'll take 3 questions from each side.
Why are you changing the rules?
Because everyone was privileged to ask a question, sir. So can I see by
Why
show
are you
of
changing the
hands?
rules? It's my thought you're about to change the rules.
All right. I think we'll do it sequentially. We'll do it sequentially from this point. And then also, please, the online audience, especially those state coordinators, they've been tasked by the overseeing director to stay tuned. So we'll also take questions from them, and as many who are online. And please, if your question cannot be taken, you can as well send in your question to the email that will be on the presentation and also the email on the lecture series. Thank you very much. Over to the question, please.
Can we take it one by one?
One after the other, please. Can we have the hands and sit? Okay. You're starting from this. Right. Your name and.
Thank you so much. My name is Matt Usoma. During the presentation, actually, you develop interest in this export expansion fund, if I did get it correctly, and material value addition. Now, sir, you will agree with me that presidential assets to invest to this EE funds, EEF, sir, how do you intend to manage the microeconomic policy conflict arising from these two?
Okay.
I think first things first, the most important thing, you know that there are many things that we have decided to close our eyes to and pursue this bill. There are many things. Because if you open your eyes and your mouth and talk about them, many people will challenge the bill from day one, even before it gets to this point. The EEG is one of those. Because if we had done that before now, I'm sure they would have, it's when they realized, you know, they woke up late when we were doing this and then rallied stakeholders and called me to make a presentation and I refused. They wrote me and I refused. They wanted to rope me in, turned it down. There are a number of things we shied away from, and I'm coming to a question. Again, you know that oil and gas, the entirety of oil and gas belongs to our universe. It belongs to the territory here. So oil and gas is a raw material. You don't know. Yes. But if from day one we include oil and gas in anything we are doing, would have been, they will use big money and quench that. So there are a number of things we have kept quiet about. Now to answer your question, once it becomes an act, we will challenge the EEG. And trust me, I will challenge you for the oil and gas act. So there are many things we kept quiet because you have to, in Adana, they say, they are Zotani. They are Zotani, free Zotani. You have to land where you put mattress before you now start. Yeah.
Thank you, my DG. I really don't have it as a question. I want to have it as a compliment. Make it if that was approved. Because city dome of this magnitude need to be doing this kind of thing periodically. Other research institutes, they have monthly presentations. It not only helps them to grow, to be abreast of what ought to be done, but to develop their specific areas. So the first request I want to make is DG. With your permission, can we have monthly presentation or seminar in typical areas, department by department, so that departments could come like this and make presentation, either in their research findings or whatever that will be critical to the accomplishment of the functions and mandate of the council. That's a request. Two, there's a paper we wrote and sent to Colorado here. Okay, that journal, they found it back to us. In fact, that's the only paper, they threw it back that we didn't know what we were writing. Sent that paper, John Hopkins accepted it. When we threw the paper, they cancelled it that we don't know what we're writing. Do you know why? scientists, engineers, people from other areas, distinguished fields in the scientific area, they wrote classically, they said there was no economics in it. And then it lacks the transformation of the innovation, the scientific innovation into implementable strategic framework that will lead to development. And today, I am seeing that nexus between the engineering, the science, and the economics. Because the perception or the dimension from which you presented this is utilitarian, such that if you look at it, begin to see policy, if you look at it, begin to see actionable steps you can take to actually actualize that innovation that has been done in the lab. Most of our innovations, classic Nigerian, I tell you, go to this research institute, you have a lot of things lying. But the linkage to take it to the market and to actualize it, to get the expected result, is lacking. And this is where you have shown your proficiency as a sound professor of economics. Because you are now making those research findings, research knowledge, research exercises that are there, that have potential, that are the lion sleeping giants. Because by the time you showed me the disparity between what you and what South Africa can do, my mind began to ask me, what do I do to improve? We have done the basic work, we have done the R&D, but how do we move and compete? And that's where my commendation comes. That this is timely, this is strategic, is an exercise that is worth doing regularly so that it can be internalized, so that people will be prompted to do the needful here. We need to do it, DG, and you have done a very, very good work. They say that the thing that smells the snow is not in the body. So no matter how you wash, do you know what you call that couple? No matter how you wash it and perfume it, it will still be smelling. Because the element that is causing that smell is right inside, embedded in the bones, unless you break it to pieces. So as a professor of economics, he talked about that dimension, and the economics talks at the implementation, and you're carrying out what you have and bringing it to bear. So I think I like this, and I'll still commend you, saying thank you, sir, for good work, and do consider my request. Thank you very much.
Sorry,
Passes.
See, every but that means you have not been attending this project, our program. This is a lecture series. We instituted it a long time. I think this should be like the seventh.
Yes, sir.
So this is the seventh. What you will do is meet with John. You can do at the departmental level. It's actually for you. You know, I'm not telling you what you're going to do in your department. I'm not going to micromanage you. Your department is your department. So if you feel that is good for your department as part of capacity building in the department, yes, you can institutionalize it. You know, I will not force the heads of the department to do that. I've encouraged heads of departments to, or enough to develop capacity building programs in the department. And we've tried to do as much as we can to support that. Now, so it's up to you to think about that. I think departments can actually have what we call knowledge sharing sessions. Because people go for training, you share within your department. Even if you don't, even if it's within your division, you can as well do that. That's how I guess leaders, a good leader should inspire by another part of what you require to inspire to share what you know, or give opportunity for other people to share what they know. You know, so that's the bit about what I presented and economics. The truth is, and I've said it severally, and I keep saying it, nobody talking about raw materials if you do not think about the market, if you do not think about production, if you don't think about the consumption, if you don't think about distribution. And the fact that this council for several years ignored those areas, that's why you have been running circles. Because it got a point where you are staying with your invention, staying with your findings, staying with your research You stay there, you die there. So there must be a, they all interconnect. The Oyibo man that came here, who opened your eyes to raw materials, did not come to further his research. He did not come to further his research. He came here to buy your raw material for his markets, for their factories and for markets. And therefore, if what you are doing in your laboratory do not connect to the market mistake, who are you doing it for? If you go to RDBC, we have machines there. Unless we have a very robust commercialization framework, which are struggling to see if we can get, they will remain there and rot there, and new technologies will overthrow them. And the reason that happened there is because there is no robust commercialization program. We're starting to see if we can get ahead out of that. That's the reality. And commercialization lies within the hole of ignorance and law. Anyway, so sorry.
Thank you, dear speaker. It's a lecture about and mental issues in Roma. I think that is fantastic. My eyes got clearer open to see that some of our policies are actually contradicting what we are doing. And then I want to ask, or you've already given an answer on how you are going to start tackling the EEG. That's fine. Then the other policies that I think also with our 30%, if we don't start now, to do stakeholder sensitization or zonal sensitization to let them know, we are not going against the people what they are doing. We are trying to do it. I was in UN office yesterday for a book launch late in the evening. The woman that wrote you that, the group that wrote you that letter was there, and immediately they heard I was from raw material. That was one thing they tackled in that place. And I told you, we are not there possibly to fight them, the raw material system. And then just brought out a graph. One of the graphs here, that it came from World Trade Organization. And I showed them what countries are doing with their raw materials. And the woman said, we don't have any infrastructure. And I told the woman, the infrastructure can until you start it and see that it is difficult. We need to pay attention to the infrastructure. We got into agreement, and about 4 or 5 people got there and got interested. They said they want to see where we had the centralization, that they are question they have to pass. That was not the woman that she among the people. They invited you and they didn't come. They invited you for, they say, house, in-house, something. I said, well, my deal is smart. He must have done it. He knows where they are going. But what I want to say is that even with our smartness, if we don't do smart things by getting this information to the people, I think we know the right one to do, but they don't know. And until we get it to their doorpost, we must sensitize Nigeria on what this is there for them on this. On that, I have to ask you, from beginning, from inception, we became all Nigeria and then the Europeans. We have been forming this plan and this in order to take the country forward. Where did we get it wrong? That we began to jumble strategies and didn't know when we are making policies that are even against our where did we get it wrong? And the second thing I want to tell you is that on a lighter note, your lecture was good, but you almost marred this lecture in putting a European baby to thank us. You should do it.
That baby, I put it like 5 minutes back into this place. I just slammed into the place. I said, I just have to finish this in some. So maybe next time. But that's a good observation. I don't like when you do faces in that. you can help us with a concept note on how it can be run. We can do it across the states, and even that would be nice. You can give me a concept note. So I think it's very, very important. It's extremely important. The woman that said they wrote me, they know what they did because I got intelligence. I actually prepared to go with them. What happened was that Indians, and I keep saying it, they're not Indians working with some pseudo professionals or pseudo, in fact, not only pseudo, but including mischievous, academics. What they now did was they want to root into them because they wanted me to discredit. You know how you put somebody in the corner and then begin to challenge it, and they will now write a communique. So they will write a communique that majority of the opinion, if there is something that I was in support of something contrary to what I said. It's something I understand very well. So they wanted to box me in. You will be the speaker, but their communique will read something again what is spoken. And they will say you are the one who spoke, but that's the communique. So I dodged it. And thank God I didn't attend that. I actually prepared to attend it. When I got rid of the organizers and I profiled the organizers, I dropped off. So I think now where we got it from, it's not surprising to know where we got it from. When corruption took the better part of force, it becomes easy to buy anything. Because I don't know any man that has family that will come into his family and deliberately with his own hands and be killing the sources of income for his own family. It's only in Nigeria that you see that kind of thing. How can you be giving exports? Simple data will tell you that the exporters of raw materials in Nigeria are not Nigerians. You don't even need to do something that is expensive. Just reference TV. In Kano, you have the biggest raw material market for seeds. The people who are aggregating that are Indians and Lebanese. And everywhere you go, so what they do is that they give peanuts to villagers and mop up all of that and export them. If you can tell me who is a major exporter of grains in this country, tell me the person who is a Nigerian. Tell me. The best you can have are middle-level aggregators. So the rest are foreigners. So how can you now give export expansion grants to foreigners to sabotage your own economy? It's only corruption that can lead to that kind of thing. But you see, you cannot begin to talk about it at this point. If you talk about it at this point, they know where we're going. I will challenge it. And my interest in raw material is actually for things like that. When I achieve that kind of job, I go my way. If I achieve it next time, I go. I'm not so for me, that's the kind of thing I'm interested in. Let's save the country. Let's deliver this country for people coming after us.
Thank you very much, sir, for this very enlightening lecture. So I want to also add, why is by way of information on the traceability that DG mentioned, and also to also suggest that alongside the sensitization issue that we tend to embark on, maybe we can also to identify or have a complaining or a directory of people that processes our raw materials in Nigeria and export it. We have them. Yesterday, coincidentally, I was in a meeting with one of them, and he raised a point that when he exports outside the country, what he faces, the problem he faces is that the raw materials, the product that he exports, they will ask him about the traceability of that raw material. Where is it from? How did he get it? And he doesn't have it. So he was like saying, we should come in on how we can at least start this traceability issue. So I told him about the invitation that the DJ has already approved, and then we are like going to have a training before we now commence the full. Yes, we are, so that's why I use Sudan. Yes, sir.
It's not great. So you have told us that the delay is a bit program.
Yes, sir. We are holding it on the 12th of this month.
Okay.
And then we're having it in 2 batches. The first batch we intend to have to train about 30 staff cutting across all the departments. And then also we intend to link up with our state offices for that first batch training on traceability. So I just want to appeal to head of department that we will need your nominations. We are going to send out the memo to that. So I think this is just what I want.
Okay, that's fine. I think the most important thing I've said, because the traceability, like if I kept mentioning it, supply chain integrity has a whole lot to do with traceability. Increasingly, people want to know what they're buying is from. You know, part of the reason is not only because it's not only maybe about where it's from a terrorist place or whatever. There are places that you have chemicals, plenty. So you want to also be sure. So you look at the map. Maybe it's a place you have plenty of tin, and maybe that tin enters into the product, and you want the produce that has plenty of those elements. So if you know where it's coming from, you can say, no, I don't want this. You know, so they're not, so which again goes back to supply chain integrity and so on. So the Yarrow, we have already agreed. We have 3 consulting firms that are dealing with interesting things. So you are the one having that one.
These are the raw materials processors. I think we need to.
So we have a group that we're compiling that we actually have about 1,000. The database of about 1,000 processors and others. The thing is that the database we're compiling, we're still working on behind the scenes on that. We cannot have raw material exporters and they become part of us.
No, those are processors.
Sorry, no, but the person you met exports. Because one of the things I try to dodge, and anytime people come and they just come through some other way, they tell me how exporting and all of that and exporting raw material. I actually shrink or I drop back because I cannot be a messenger of all addition, and then you have been talking about exporting raw material. It just doesn't sink well for me. Even if I'm not the DGCEO of the RMRDC, I think it's wrong. I'm not doing any good for my children, and for my children's children. I'm not helping them. I'm selling their destiny. I'm making an average Indian man to be better than the sophisticated Nigerian. Making them prosper, and they're taking away our prosperity. You know, if there's a video I've shown you. If I have told you, if just think that this bill, this bill will become an act, and therefore nobody takes away raw material, everything being processed. One of the things that will happen is that those people carry their machines into this place.
Sure.
They will invest their machines here. It's normal. After they have waited to pressure and all of that, they begin to bring their machines. Your people will know how to operate machines. They will have jobs. And dignified jobs for that matter. People will cultivate and know that they are processing. A whole number of things. So you cannot just lock up the destiny of say you're doing business, and they have a big commission set up and all that they do. And I'm not, frankly speaking, I'm not. But every time I see Nigeria Export Promotion Commission and I see them on the television talking about the volume of exports, I cry, I weep. Because me, my heart bleeds. I don't know how somebody will say you exported whatever 1,000 tons of groundnut. What will it fetch you? What will it fetch you? But if you do that groundnut here, extracting the vegetable oil here, you will have the food for feeds, for animals, for the cakes. You will have the oil. If we cannot sell all of them here, we sell to Cameroon, to Gabon, to China, to all major countries, we will end for it. See the whole lot.
Sincerely speaking, I was quite fervently for God to be able to attend this lecture because I know if DG handle this matter, will go beyond possibilities to critical concept analysis. That's why we're here. I've listened to you and pick 5 key points. We've talked about strengthening collaboration, talk about building local capacity, talk about ensuring supply chain resilience, talk about commercializing research output, and also measuring impact and performance. I have 5 questions on this area, but I won't ask the 5. I'll just ask 2. And this question is not for DG, it's for all the directors, so that we can develop concepts on this. In Nigeria's industrial development, how can our medicine strengthen collaboration with other government agencies, research institutes, and private sector to ensure that our raw materials value addition strategies move beyond policy framework and result in measurable industrial development? Question number 1. Please, all the directors note it because we're going to develop concept on this. Second question, number 2. About moving from action to transformation. Sir, from your experience, how can the council practically bridge the distinct technology and human capacity gap with processing and manufacturing, especially within the sector, maybe agro sector and mineral sector? How do we bridge this gap? Human capacity gap, technology gap. Thank you, sir. I have 5, but I will send to directors who are outside. But let's brainstorm on this.
So the director will answer their own, verifying this. You know, when I came here, and that was the thing we were going to use this answer to answer Etu's Obasi's question. There's a question he asked that I forgot. It was anyway, what I think is just a flip again. You're talking about the whole idea of moving from extraction to transformation. If we get this bill as an act, we would have done 70% of the journey to doing that. And I'll tell you what will happen. I've started with what if. If you know you are not going to export your groundnuts the way it is to Ghana or anywhere, the first that comes to your mind is, what am I going to do with these groundnuts? You know, there are people who are there who are going to take the groundnuts from you on the local level. So just say, I have groundnuts, but you know I don't have a machine to extract oil from groundnut. But you have a machine to extract oil from groundnut. So some of your neighbor uses a small machine, and everybody around the neighborhood pushes their groundnut to the neighbor. the neighbor buys granola. So there is immediate exchange and trade. And people can go from what granola because there's a neighbor who can do that. The neighbor becomes a processor and grows the technology within the neighborhood and builds the human capacity within that neighborhood. That's the human capacity for processing. And the neighbor is going to meet people from other neighborhoods basically doing the same thing. And part of what will happen is the competitiveness of these supplies. And the one that is more outstanding becomes the model. Every other person tries to enhance the capacity around his own neighborhood to meet that. So it's just a key that unlocks that, and it will happen at scale. And part of what will happen is that technology for improved processing will naturally trickle into the system. Yeah? Will naturally trickle into the system. So the human capacity, the technology, and by extension, because by this particular act, the government will have locked itself in. That's what it means. The government will lock itself in. Will be forced to look inwards in terms of supply chain resilience factors. So that's basically how it works. So, and I think that addresses part of what you were also asking. You know, it's good to understand the economy. You asked a question about when do we move from policy and strategy to this. The reason again for this decision about the bill is important to know is that it is a law, it's not a strategy. We are looking for a law. We're not working with the government to develop a strategy. Law locks everybody in. So because for all the years it's independent, we're talking about policy and policy failure. We're talking about implementation and implementation failure. You don't have a failure in law. You have a breach. You have a breach of the law as punishable. So it will eliminate, it will minimize to very considerable level the issues of policy failure, issues of implementation failure. So we are not going to be dealing with issues of the law. We're no longer about whether the situation is working or whether the implementation strategies are working. So this is a deviation from strategy, from policy, but getting everything locked in within the law. That's the reason we took that route. I think it's getting clearer, like you said.
I want to join my voice with other speakers to really commend DG for this beautiful. For some of us, we saw the teacher. We used to see the DG, but today we can see you as a teacher. And it also shows where your passion is coming from on two things: the value addition and the data matter. You know, you have made everybody know how passionate you are about this. And you are right that our responsibility as a council is in the area of facilitation. So I want to bring to your notice today that in the process of our field work, because myself and my team in the OPS and the NDA decks, we have had engagement with some people from we went to Ministry of Agri, and we have gone also to Solid. So you might not understand the extent of threats or disaster that they have for raw materials. We have to go because our responsibility is to see how we can facilitate engagement so that when we are successful, we hand it over to Agri. This is what we have been able to do with the Ministry of Agri. See how we can, because synergy is very important. If we've succeeded in Ministry of Mineral, we hand it to the appropriate department and say, take it off from there. but that the truth is that they don't even want to see us. So when we had engagements with even OPS, this mineral, the people in the mineral society, we had an encounter with somebody that told us that while they were mining for the Indians, or is it Indian or Chinese, they came with gone. So in the process of their mining site, while they're in the hole, they have to swallow some of this precious stone. Because when you come out, you have to naked yourself to ensure that you are not going home with any of this. And that is
in your own country.
In your own country. So sir, you see, unless you engage with them, you don't really know exactly the extent to which we are being raped as a nation. So sir, the question now is that, sir, how do we walk across this, even when all we want to preach is that not about raw materials, is about how we can, let's synergize concerning this. And yet you face so much. And like I told you the other time when we were having our priority project for 2026, I said we've had engagements, but nobody wants to know your effort except you have success stories. So I thank God that such a lecture has come up today. When we face such, so how do we navigate through, knowing fully well that all we are just after is that let's work together for the betterment of Nigeria. So how do we navigate through to make sure that we have a good
I was thinking you're a big navigator. Anyway, that's what we're playing here in the council. You should have skills in diplomacy. But the hatred is clear, it's very obvious. Now, what we do in the 2025 African Raw Materials Summit, we made them more. That's where the hatred became very obvious to us. And I'll break them down. So we have hatred for RMRC coming from outside of the country, and we have internal levels of hatred for RMRC. Unfortunately, the RMRC put itself in a hole, a big hole before now. So it becomes easier to even spite us. But I pray God that we get out of it. We went to the Minister of Agriculture. I don't know who followed us to that place. Were you part of it? But you were outside. The minister, and it's not, this is, you record it because that's the truth. The minister proposed things we are doing, and I challenged him. I told him no. He tried to convince, I said no. He said, we have to save this country. He tried to give examples of how, why. I said no. And then we left. They wrote us a letter that they are not going to be part of the Africa Robber, that they are not going to be part. They don't want to be part of it. Hello, you understand me?
Yes, sir.
That's from the minister. Although we got very warm reception from the Minister of State. For the next one, we'll still go back. I will go back again and present our stuff because I don't care. We will arrange to come, we don't come, but we will still go and tell them. We are not Ministry of Agriculture. We are not farmers. Our work is very distinct. And I think directors, directors, people who are knowledgeable should explain this. The work of RMRDC, the purpose lies on two fronts. Import substitution, value addition facilitation, QED. So anytime you begin to see yourself, because you are in the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Allied, and you begin to see yourself as allied to the Minister of Agriculture, you are making a mistake. So if you look at this lecture, we have extraction to transformation. Your job is not at the extraction phase. Agriculture and solid minerals are at the extraction stage. That's not where we belong to. We are also not at the transformation stage. Manufacturers are at the transformation phase. We are in the middle. That's what I say it's intermediation or intermediary. facilitate. So, but these guys do not also belong to our own phase. They don't facilitate. For agriculture is produce enough for food security and for other purposes. Solid minerals give them licenses so that people can mine and all of that. It is not in facilitating value addition or valorization, no. Or beneficiation, as the case may be. I went to solid minerals when we want to do the minister. So I'm just giving you experience. So it's not as if you have made something strange. It's something I've experienced all the time. I remember I spent a good time part of my nights trying to also see the future of our animals. So while you probably are sleeping, you know you like to sleep. So I went to solid minerals, and I told him that we're launching the RMR, the Raw Materials Management Information System. So the first time we went to him, he said, he gave us a date. Because my former minister told me that it will be good with them so that they don't see you as taking over their job. So, and we know that Dele is the president opposite. So we tell them before they now say you are looking for. So we went and told him. The second time we had a very fantastic discussion, and he said, "This is good," and he fixed a date by himself. So we used that date to fix the date for the event, and he was supposed to be a speaker. On that day, one of his agencies set up another event. He himself, in fact, he told me that our event should, and that's the reason we put it on that day, that it should be used as the first in the series of activities to mark the second anniversary of this project. That's so good that it should be used as the beginning. So that particular one, yeah, one of the agencies had activity and they sent me a letter to talk. So I should leave my phone to go there. So the thing is that I do not blame them, and I'll tell you the reason I don't blame them. It's because we have to tell the world who we are. In the past 1 week, I've been thinking of how we rebrand so it becomes clear the understanding of what RMRDC is, who we are, and and how we differ from other agencies. We don't have that kind of communication anywhere. It's very important because it's law. We don't have that kind of document. If we have it, you can send it across to some of these ministries. We are not competing. Ours is different. And I think it's something that we can take up. So you're not alone. The only thing is that if you understand what we're supposed to be doing, once you get to the place, let them know the limits. So if you go and be claiming agriculture in the Ministry of Agriculture, of course they're going to treat you like an outcast because you are not one, frankly speaking. So if you also come with challenging people with solid minerals about how you're very good in lithium, you are not one who did that. So, even in partner, you have to know the limits where you partner. You cannot go into their domain and say you want to partner. Yeah?
In the exploration and the implementation, you are not there.
You are not there.
So in value addition.
Yes, sir. In value addition, you are all there.
Thank you, sir. First, I want to appreciate DG for this lecture. When you were talking, you said that nobody told you
know when students are not enjoying your class, they will slip off.
So
Because the same is exactly what we are into. So we are all following. And when you gave that example of your experience with potato, I was just smiling. We go on an investment follow, and most SMEs, this is their pure experience. When we start talking about value addition, because everywhere we go, that's what we talk about. The question now is, you said we should not allow these foreigners to buy our raw materials. You want us to add value to them, because we tell them you can do this, you can. They will not say, after we finish, where is the market? Most of them complain that they don't have market for their products. We were on NIRA, when we went to NIRA, the woman that brought smoked fish, she came all the way from Ikorodu. She called me and was telling me, man, you people invited us to this program. Nobody has bought a single pack of the fish. So when we are talking about value addition, there are key areas we should be looking into. Off-takers, they are very important to them. Then there should be linkages to markets. Then another one is equipment. We cannot be telling them, don't sell your raw product. What have we given them to do little addition to them? So these are key areas. These are questions that everywhere I go, these questions come to me. I only pray before they give me, I say, Holy Spirit, help me. So, sir, these are areas I think we should focus our value addition on, so that these SMEs can come. Because when they face the kind of issue you face, you are a big man, so you are able to survive. Even after you sold a total of 70,000, 17,000, 4,035, you were able to survive. If that thing happens to a small trader, that's the end of the business. So please, they need help.
It did happen in Cassava. It did happen in Cassava.
Cassava.
Even grandmas possibly build cassava consumption. I was talking to go to Kebbi to go and see how we can salvage the situation, because we took the message possibly to the minister, and the minister asked that we should go to the place. We went to the anywhere to keep them. And then they were perishing. And then one quick initiative, there was a Chinese company that worked for them in that place. We took the Chinese company to possibly go and see the cassava, whether they could export them. They said that they want to bring a starch machine to the place. And that's how Kebbi got their starch making machine, which they have. It's the company that was doing local road for them, that brought the China and saved the situation. So all the communities started sending their product to that place. But I want to point out something there, because in the past things have happened. This hatred, like you are saying, it didn't start now. I've had a trip in Ministry of Agriculture with Professor Omar, the Ministry of Solid Mineral, because they actually needed to understand this fight that we are taking their job has always been there. But until you clear them, until the minister understood this, until the day of Adeshina, and they understand that we are not doing agriculture to feed the populace or things like that. Until he understood it, we are not into that type of big agriculture. But this is what we are doing. We are making people to add value to agricultural product that has already come from you. And the one you are taking for feeding, you go for feeding. But after that, we don't want the one that is remaining to get lost. The same thing with solid mineral. We were able to tell them, see, we don't have any business with solid mineral as far as it is still on the ground. Do your mining and this thing. But when it comes to the surface, and we find out that you're going to have issue of them oxidizing, of them not having where to go, then we begin to add value into them. So we adapt of value, not in the upstream of possibly mining, exploring where the mines are, or mining or digging from the street. You don't get those activities. It is when the mine materials are out. Then sometimes you don't have where to. People who bring them out want to send them out. But the dynamics, like you see, is coming out very clear now. They even get more value. And that's why there are 3 or 4 companies jostling for now they have agreed that they want to do their own batteries. And that is when the time comes that people find out they cannot take this thing out, they will go to bring this their machine.
Thank you very much.
What I will say and give us this information. I think we need to know what we are doing and expected to do and what we are expected to say when such a list comes. I think it was last year when we went for budget defense. Immediately I mentioned onion. The woman has already challenged Mr. Shomi and has chased them out. I said no, I have to go back there. The woman said I should not mention onion. There are 2 products I mentioned in agriculture. I should not mention. Am I a minister of agriculture? Why should we talk about it? I said, madam, this parallel, as far as I'm talking, we are parallel to the minister. I said, how? I said, on what you are talking about, I'm not contending with Minister of Agriculture on agronomy. I'm not talking about agronomy. I'm not talking about farming. I'm not coming here for food security. I'm not talking about fishing. That onion, he said, whatever. I said, the products of onion, he said, doesn't need onion. I said, the Maggi you are having in your chef is from onion, and it's not the core mandate of the Ministry of Agriculture. We are using the onion to produce that which you require. That is the perspective from which raw material is coming. We are into development and the value addition is process. We're not talking about to boost onion for food security. We are saying we are going to have a variety of onion that is very good for making onion flakes, that is very good in making onion powder, and which you can use as derivatives in other pharmaceutical and food industries. The one says that's so. That day she was properly indicated and she accepted it. Most of the time we don't even know what we ought to do. And sir, I think there's an expert who have an app. The other time I told you that we will develop, I will bring him, if he so satisfies you, he wants to bring an app that can bring together producers, processors, buyers and sellers at a point, which raw material cannot control. Be in control. Maybe I'll bring it to you if you can do it. That will help us to get that app where raw material will now be the center point to know who does what, where he does it, and everything. With just an app. That's right.
Like you said, it's a trade box.
I'm finished now. You're the one. I'm waiting for people to listen.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, my colleagues and my directors. I want to add the issue of helping with value addition, especially at the grassroots level. There was something we were doing before, cluster development. I think we can also emphasize on it now. This experience you said you had, everybody had it. Most people had it. I had a course that did a lot of cassava. You asked him to make it to Lokoja, very good. By the time you got to Lokoja, so some even have up to half of the gas. So if we can have a model of cluster development at local government level, that all the producers will have the splitting points, there will be an off-taker, processors and all that. And there will be a small-scale processing outlets. I think it will go a long way to help with that value addition drive. Thank you, sir.
They cover the camera.
Thank you very much. The DG, the directors, the deputy directors, the assistant directors. Thank you so much for making today's RMRDC lecture series absolutely exciting. A round of applause for yourself for your contribution. I'd like to hand the microphone over to Professor John Hart.
Well, thank you very much. According to Western Churchill, the price of greatness is responsibility. And as you can see from the lecture, the able DG has been able to shoulder that responsibility and indeed as a mark of greatness. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, may I have the privilege to invite for the key facilitator of the Directorate of Corporate Affairs to come forward and just say something to the DG before we have the vote of thanks from Dr. Ebiago. Please give me a round of applause.
The DG sir, senior colleagues, permit me to stand on the existing protocol. In fact, this is a great meeting. Lectures. We've never had a long time like this. Thank you, sir. This is a very great impactful knowledge, a very great one. I can see due to even time, most people have been carried away because of the sound, interest, and gathering more information on what we think we have and adding on what still we don't have. Thank you very much, sir. At the same time, this is a maiden month of which we have a cake for the DG and the cake for the guest lecturer. We want to start celebrating the graduation. Thank you very much, sir. We want to start saying happy birthday to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please can we rise as we give honor to D, whose month is this month. It's a special souvenir from the RMRDC Lecture Series team. We appreciate you. You have taught us well. You have shown us the path to greatness. And today you have actually combined both roles of being DG, teacher, instructor, director, administrator, and a great contributor. Thank you so much. The director's report our director. Now, can I have a D? D. Can I have a G? G. Can I have a C? C. Can I have an E? E. Can I have an O? O. Yay! For he's a jolly good fellow. For he's a jolly good fellow. Thank you and
is our own Professor John John. Give a round of applause for him.
I think I just want to say, you know, it takes to be a leader. The point of view to this church has been unfathomable and undeniably a proof that he's a man of knowledge. And like the words of Winston Churchill, Vin Vidi Vici. He became the son and the God. So that is our duty. Please can you give me a round of applause? As we call on Dr. Everett by vote of thanks before we proceed for the pictures. Yes.
Thank you very much. What over thanks? Which over thanks than what he has given and what has been said? But be it as he may for the essence of protocol. I want to thank you, sir. That's what we call pesiters. That's what we call light. When light comes, darkness must certainly disappear. Incontrovertibly. And when you have something upstairs, effortlessly reels out.
Yeah.
I was watching one television program the other day. This fish, when it looks out of the water, it goes by the leaf and deposits the eggs here. I was watching with keen interest. I saw the eggs. I was asking, how did nature make these small fish to get back to their source and begin to take the normal cycle of existence? You see, DG, I should not say praising you, but you have brought a new dimension to the case. Very inspiring, very clear, very strategic in your approaches and in the way you are leading. Let me tell you one thing you need to understand about people like us, they maybe have not had it. We are trained on how to read and write. The 3 hours was what the white man used to deceive Nigeria. 3 hours. Reading, writing, arithmetic. Because they don't call it arithmetic, they call it arithmetic. So we call it reading, writing, and arithmetic. And they brought into us what they call CPF, crampo and forget. That's why if you take our students out there to do any classroom work, they get 100 of 100 here. The white man does not believe that cognitive, preferring the cognitive against the psychomotive. So, he is not bringing reality into existence. Something must be reactivating us. Because if you give us something, we can start right, bring a lot of things, put it, but that does not translate into any meaningful, practical impact. But he has come to see that that which was lying here was idle and it can be reactivated for better things. Look at the lecture he brought. I started thinking about that. And for information, sir, give me 2 weeks, this year lecture will be translated into a publishable journal. It's a sensational book that is a world-class selling book. So it won't stop here. It will be turned into journal publication. Thank you very much, sir, for this. You are inciting us positively, and we thank you for the grace. At each time in the history of humanity, God will always bring a redeemer. I call it the redeemer. I classify you as a redeemer that has come to redeem us and redeem things here. Everybody has done their duties according to God's calling, but you have come to redeem this place. And I pray that God will allow you to accomplish that task. Amen. Thank everybody that has come. Thank you for active participation. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for what you will do hereafter. Answer. Thank you for today. Marks a day, very important day, that you struggled. Every human being was a product of severe and serious competition. a man ejaculates millions of spermatozoa at a time. Out of that, only one. So he is a very good competitor, and he can't face in that. Today, you are also seeing the day you are brought into this earth to become impact, and I know that which God has brought into this world to impact. Oh, you are, I thought you said today. They love you so much. So whatever it is, God has brought into us humanity. God has brought into mankind humanity that will turn around our future for best. Thank you very much for this lecture. Thank you for everything. And we thank Almighty God who has given us this day and grace and time and strength. May His name be glorified in Jesus' name.
National anthem, please. National anthem.
Sorry.